The numbers were clean. Every cost projection lined up. Every maintenance forecast confirmed the direction. The engineers had spent 18 years proving what they built, and the accountants had spent 18 years watching. In 1959, the accounting won. 17 of the 25 most powerful steam locomotives ever built went to the scrapyard between 1959 and 1962. The men who ordered this were not wrong. Diesel cost less to run. Diesel needed no water stops. A diesel locomotive traveled farther on a single fill than a steam engine could manage in 3 days of operation, and it required a fraction of the maintenance infrastructure that steam demanded at every division point. The economic argument for scrapping the big boy class was complete. A diesel locomotive on Union Pacific's lines in 1959 did not require a water column every 100 miles. It did not require a fire crew to maintain steam pressure through a rest period. It did not require the specialized boiler shops, the trained steam mechanics, or the coal and water infrastructure that big boy operations had demanded at every division point from Ogden to Cheyenne for 18 years. Union Pacific had been building its diesel fleet since 1945. By the time the last big boy made its final revenue run, the infrastructure argument for steam was already gone. What followed anyway, 2 machines surviving into a June morning in Scranton, Pennsylvania 65 years later, was not heroism. It was a sequence of individual decisions made by specific people at specific moments that happened to go the other direction. Understanding what that survival cost is the whole point. This video is an audit. 2 institutions, 2 machines, 2 completely different answers to the same question. What is a £1 million piece of American engineering actually worth once it stops earning? If this is the kind of accounting nobody else is running, subscribe to American Ironworks and drop your answer in the comments before the end. The 25 big boys were built at the American Locomotive Company Works in Schenectady, New York, between 1941 and 1944. Every machine went to Union Pacific for a single job, to haul a 3,600-ton loaded freight train over the Wasatch Range between Ogden, Utah, and Cheyenne, Wyoming, without a helper locomotive on the grade. Before these machines existed, that job required 2 locomotives, one at the head end and one pushing at the rear. Otto Jabelmann, head of Union Pacific's Department of Research and Mechanical Standards, decided the second locomotive was the problem. His answer was to build something powerful enough to make it unnecessary. The design that achieved this was articulated, a frame that bends at the center joint, allowing 1.2 million pounds to distribute across a 132-foot length that no rigid frame could have negotiated given the railroad's minimum curve radius of 288 feet. Jabelmann delivered the full engineering package to Alco in early 1941. Alco completed the design and had the first locomotive running under power in approximately 6 months. Number 4000 was delivered to Union Pacific in Omaha on September 4, 1941. Number 4012 followed in December. Union Pacific did not adapt its existing infrastructure to receive these machines. Miles of lighter rail were replaced with heavier stock across the relevant divisions. Turning facilities were resized. Maintenance operations were restructured at Cheyenne and Green River. The railroad rebuilt itself around the locomotive. This level of institutional commitment makes what came later more difficult to explain. The class entered service the same week the United States declared war on Japan, and the timing was not coincidental. Federal pressure on the railroads to expand freight capacity had been building since 1940. The big boys went directly into wartime work, hauling military equipment, raw materials, and fuel across the Wasatch Range. In regular service, trains of 4,200 tons were documented against the 3,600-ton design specification. On April 2, 1943, number 4014 pulled 65 loaded freight cars between Ogden and Evanston, Wyoming, and peaked at 5,530 horsepower, a test figure that appeared in almost no public documentation for decades after the run. They exceeded what they were built to do from the first year they ran. Revenue service continued for 18 years. By the time the last big boy revenue run ended on the morning of July 21, 1959, each of the first 20 machines had logged over 1 million miles. Number 4014 had traveled 1,031,205 miles. The last 5 machines in the class had each cleared 800,000 miles. Retirement came in stages. Most were stored operational through 1961. 4 remained in operational condition at Green River, Wyoming through July 1962. The last official retirement came that month. Diesel locomotives absorbed everything the class had handled for 18 years. 17 were scrapped. Each one was approximately 600 tons of steel. Each one had been fabricated to tolerances that took Alco's Schenectady Works 6 months to produce from the initial engineering package. Each had run over a mountain range that broke lighter equipment through wartime conditions that no original specification had anticipated. The scrap value per machine exceeded the cost of finding a museum that did not yet exist. The institutional logic was not wrong. 8 did not follow the 17 to the yard. Not because any institution had a plan, because individual decisions made by specific people at specific moments happened to go in the other direction, and 2 of those decisions produced the machines now standing in Scranton. Number 1412 was built in November 1941 at the same Schenectady Works, delivered to Union Pacific in December of that year. It worked the Wasatch alongside 4014 and the rest of the class for 18 years. When retirement came in 1962, Union Pacific began identifying destinations for machines it no longer needed. F. Nelson Blount was a wealthy businessman in Vermont who had been building a private railway museum at Bellows Falls for years, Steamtown, USA, a working collection of steam-era equipment assembled through personal financing and the kind of obsessive conviction that creates institutions from nothing. Blount ran steam excursions on a section of Connecticut River line. He rebuilt locomotive components in working shops. He was attempting something institutional preservation had not tried, keeping the machines operational, not just displayed. Union Pacific would donate the locomotive. The condition was non-profit status. Blount did not have a qualifying entity. He created one. The Steamtown Foundation for the Preservation of Steam and Railroad Americana was established in 1962 for a single operational purpose: to receive a single locomotive. A legal structure assembled from scratch to prevent one machine from following the 17. The donation went through. Number 4012 reached Bellows Falls and entered static display alongside a collection that Blount had spent the better part of a decade assembling from acquisition deals, private purchases, and donation negotiations with railroads that were, by the early 1960s, eager to move their steam equipment off the books. Number 4014 took a different path. Union Pacific donated it in January 1962 to the Southern California chapter of the Railway and Locomotive Historical Society. It went to the Rail Giants Train Museum at the Los Angeles County Fairgrounds in Pomona, California. Open-air static display. 52 years of California sun and temperature cycling. No boiler maintenance, no operational schedule, no institutional mandate to do anything beyond keeping it visible to fairgrounds visitors who passed it on the way to something else. By the time Union Pacific engineers assessed it in 2013, the locomotive had not moved under its own power since 1959. The condition of the boiler, the combustion system, and thousands of mechanical components that had sat dormant through 5 decades of ambient weather was the starting point for what came next. 2 machines from the same factory, the same month, the same class. Donated the same year to 2 completely different custodians in 2 completely different states, both accidental survivors of an order that had just destroyed 17 of their kind. Both machines escaped the accounting. What happened to them in the decades that followed is a different kind of record, and it is not a comfortable one. In 1984, Vermont's air quality regulations began restricting steam excursions. Attendance at Blount's museum had declined steadily. Blount himself had died in a plane crash in 1967. The foundation had continued under different management, operating without the personal financial backing that had made it viable. The Steamtown collection relocated to Scranton, Pennsylvania. Some pieces from the broader Blount collection were sold at auction during the transition. Number 4012 moved with the core collection. In 1986, Congress allocated funding for the National Park Service to formally acquire Steamtown and develop the site as a National Historic Destination. By 1995, the National Park Service had invested $66 million in establishing Steamtown National Historic Site at 350 Cliff Street, Scranton, a federal commitment to preserving what one man's personal conviction had kept alive. Number 4012 was the centerpiece. The problem appeared at the Scranton site immediately. No roundhouse on the property was large enough to shelter a 132-foot articulated locomotive. A machine designated as the signature exhibit of a federally funded historic site had no indoor storage. Congress had allocated $66 million for the site. The site never built number 4012 a roof. The locomotive spent the next 35 years outside. In October 2019, the National Park Service removed it from public display. The documentation cited rust that had advanced to structural concern and hazardous materials from the original 1941 construction, asbestos and lead paint that had accumulated through decades of outdoor exposure and required professional abatement before the machine could be safely accessed by restoration crews. Asbestos from original insulation and lead from the 1941 finish are not surface problems. They are embedded in the fabric of a machine that was never designed to be handled by hazmat protocols. The gap between number 4012's last meaningful live maintenance and its 2019 removal represents 35 years of institutional custody that did not include a building. The cosmetic restoration ran from 2019 through May 2021. Rusted components were addressed, hazardous materials were abated, a new paint job was applied. Number 4012 returned to static exhibition on May 5, 2021. It is cosmetically restored, correctly painted, it does not run. Number 4014's path through the same decades produced a different result. Union Pacific reacquired it from the Rail Giants Museum in 2013. The 5-year restoration at the Cheyenne Steam Shop rebuilt boiler components from the shell inward. Fuel conversion from coal, 56,000 pounds per run at original specification, to number 5 fuel oil required a complete redesign of the combustion system. Thousands of machine parts that had not moved since the Eisenhower administration were replaced to original tolerances or fabricated from scratch. Estimated cost, $50 million. On May 4, 2019, number 4014 rolled out of the Cheyenne shop under its own power for the first time in 58 years. A corporation spent $50 million and got a running locomotive. The federal government spent $66 million and got one that needed hazardous materials abatement before crews could touch it. Which result surprises you more, or did you already know how this math works? On June 15, 2026, both machines will be in the same Railyard in Scranton. By available documentation, no two big boys have shared a location since these machines were in active revenue service. The last time this configuration existed was sometime in the 1950s, when multiple machines were assigned to the same Wasatch Division and moved through the same yards as part of normal operations. Nobody recorded it as an event worth photographing. Steamtown National Historic Site, 350 Cliff Street. Number 4014 arrives on June 15th as part of the 2026 Coast to Coast Tour, the first time it has entered the Eastern Time Zone under its own power since it left the Alco factory 85 years ago. Number 4012 is already there. It has been there since 1984. June 15th and 16th are the Union Pacific closed display days, ticketed through recreation.gov. Number 4014 remains at Steamtown through June 30th for a scheduled boiler wash and maintenance window. Both locomotives are accessible during regular park hours throughout that window. What the June 15th frame contains is specific. Number 4014 is operational with 300 pounds per square inch of steam pressure driving 4 cylinders simultaneously. The exhaust note at operating speed is audible from a considerable distance, and does not sound like anything else currently running on American tracks. Number 4012 is cosmetically restored, correctly painted, and stationary, 1.2 million pounds of silent steel. Same design, same factory, same month. One runs, one does not. The difference between them is not age. Both machines are 84 years old in 2026. The difference is $50 million of corporate investment applied to one and 35 years of outdoor storage applied to the other. That contrast, standing side by side in a working rail yard, is the most complete documentary record of what two different American institutions decided these machines were worth once they stopped earning. Of the 8 surviving big boys, 7 are permanent static exhibits. They will not run again under their own power. The restoration required to make any one of them operational is identical in scope to what Union Pacific invested in number 4014. No museum and no federal agency has that mandate, that budget, or that timeline on its current schedule. The men who watch the big boy class in revenue service are in their 70s and 80s now. Some rode freight through the Wasatch on crew. Some stood at grade crossings in Wyoming as children, watching something that shook the ground and kept moving. They are the last living witnesses to what these machines looked like when both of them ran, and this is the last time any of them will see two big boys in the same location. When number 4014 leaves Scranton at the end of June, it travels east to Philadelphia for the July 4th display, then west across the Mississippi in late July, then back to Cheyenne. Number 4012 stays. The configuration closes. Number 4014 will eventually be retired from touring. No machine runs forever, and the maintenance demands of an operational steam locomotive running on a modern freight railroad are not indefinitely sustainable. When that retirement comes, the window that June 2026 contains will have closed entirely. The scrapping of 17 was a decision. The survival of 8 was an accident. What Steamtown looks like on June 15th is the only moment the accident and the decision stand in the same frame. After the end of June, the accident goes west. The decision stays in Scranton. If that's the kind of accounting you want more of, subscribe to American Iron Works.